August 11th, 2007. The mountains of Wyoming. Two men are climbing a rock face. Experienced, well-trained, with perfect gear. They're almost at the top. Just a few more meters, and the route is done. Then, suddenly, a rock falls from above. One hit, just one. The helmet shatters. One of the climbers drops and hangs motionless on the rope. His partner freezes, staring in shock. His friend is gone. Right there, high above the ground. But the worst part isn't that he died. The worst part is where that rock came from. Because it wasn't a rock fall. It wasn't an accident. Someone threw it, for fun, without even realizing there were people below. This is the story of how one careless act can cost a life. The story of Pete Absolon, a man who spent his career teaching others to stay safe and lost his own life because someone else didn't. Let's start with who Pete Absolon was. The man who was struck by that rock. He wasn't some weekend hiker with a backpack and a dream. He was a legend of American mountaineering, a man who lived his entire life on the edge between discipline and wilderness. Pete was born in Colorado, a state where mountains fill the horizon from almost every window. From childhood, he was drawn to the peaks. While other kids rode their bikes, he climbed rocks, learning every crack and ledge. Later, he went to the University of Colorado, and that's where his passion for the mountains became a way of life. He belonged to the generation shaped in Yosemite, the mecca of American climbing, a place where sheer granite walls rise hundreds of meters, where every route demands not only strength but intelligence, a place where mistakes aren't forgiven. For 17 years, Pete built his life in the mountains, but not as an adrenaline junkie chasing fame. He was a disciplined professional, someone who saw the mountains not as a playground for risk, but as a school of order. His approach was almost mathematical. Calculation, analysis, caution. Colleagues said he was more like an engineer than a climber. He led the regional branch of the Rocky Mountain Institute, a center that trained mountain guides and rescuers. There, Pete was more than an instructor. He was a mentor who taught not just technique, but mindset. His lessons never started with how to place an ice axe, but with a question. Why are you here in the first place? Students remember how he checked every rope, every carabiner, every knot, 3 times. He could stop an entire session because of a poorly tied loop, not because he was nitpicking, but because he knew exactly what carelessness leads to. Some called him a perfectionist. He'd just smile and say, "I'd rather you laugh at me now than light a candle for someone later." He had one rule he repeated to everyone: never take a route you don't trust. If something feels too risky, turn back. No pride, no excuses. He believed a climber's strength wasn't in pushing to the end, but in knowing when to stop. At home, his wife Molly, a journalist and mountain instructor herself, and their little daughter Avery were waiting for him. Together, they spent weekends hiking the Wyoming trails, camping at the foot of the ranges, sharing quiet picnics in the wind. Pete never told his daughter scary stories about avalanches or storms. He taught her to respect the mountains, to understand their rhythm, to listen to the wind and the snow. He used to say, "The mountains aren't a place for conquest, they're a place for discipline." He was the kind of man who always did things by the book, never took reckless risks, never cut corners, but never challenged nature for the sake of pride. In his backpack, there was always a spare carabiner, a backup safety system, and a plan B for bad weather. He didn't climb for records, for attention, or for photos. For him, the summit wasn't the goal. It was proof that everything had been done right. The cruel irony is that a man like that died because of someone else's mistake. He spent his life teaching others to be careful, and died because someone wasn't. That's what makes his story so bitter. Everything he believed in, everything he taught, was shattered by one careless rock thrown for fun. Now, let's talk about the mountains where Pete Absolon lost his life. Wyoming isn't Colorado with its ski resorts and crowds of tourists. It isn't Yosemite with its famous cliffs and busy campgrounds. Wyoming is different. It's a place for those who seek silence and harshness. The Wind River Range is one of the wildest corners of the continental United States, a 100-mile stretch of the Rocky Mountains. There are no paved roads leading to base camps here, no cafes at the foot of the peaks, no cell service, just mountains, forests, and absolute stillness. Climbers love this place precisely for that, because you can spend a week here without meeting a single person, because everything around you is raw, untouched, real. But within this range, there's a place that inspires special respect and a bit of fear. It's called the Cirque of the Towers. Imagine a giant stone amphitheater, a glacial basin carved thousands of years ago as the ice crept through the valley, polishing the granite walls. The cliffs rise hundreds of meters high, forming a perfect semicircle. In the center lies a flat open space, surrounded by steep, jagged slopes covered in ice and loose rock. It's breathtakingly beautiful and deadly. Here, the temperature swings constantly. During the day, the sun warms the rock. The ice melts, water seeps into the cracks. At night, the temperature drops, the water freezes and expands. The rock splits. The bonds holding the stones in place weaken, and then the rocks fall. But not the way you might imagine. They don't just drop straight down. They ricochet off ledges, gather speed, change direction, turning into unpredictable projectiles flying at insane velocity. Mountain guides know this rule by heart. They repeat it to everyone who comes to the Cirque of the Towers. Never stand directly beneath the wall, even if everything looks calm, even if it feels safe, because a rockfall can start at any second, without warning. And here's the irony. Pete Absolon, a man who had worked in these mountains for 17 years, knew that rule better than anyone. He was the one teaching others to avoid places like this. For his entire career, he stayed away from the Cirque. 17 years. Think about that. 17 years he never set foot there, because he knew the risk was too high. But on August 11th, 2007, he made a decision. He and Steve Hurley chose a new route, challenging, beautiful, and it went straight through that stone amphitheater. They started early in the morning. The first sunlight brushed the peaks, and the rock felt warm, though the air was still sharp and cold, filled with the scent of pine and wet granite. A thin mist lingered in the valley below. Everything was still. Even the birds were quiet. The only sounds were the clink of metal as Pete checked his carabiners, and their short, practiced calls. Belay on, belay's good. That's how their climb began. No rush, no drama, just work. They moved methodically. Pete led, Steve belayed from below. It was their usual rhythm. One move up, tension, check, command. Everything precise, as if rehearsed 100 times before. And in a way it was. After years of climbing together, they moved in perfect sync. When Pete reached for a hold, Steve already knew where his hand would go. When Steve fed the rope, Pete felt it without looking down. Two men connected by a single line, a single goal, and complete trust. As the sun rose higher, the air warmed and the rock grew rougher, scraping the skin from their fingers. Pete didn't seem to notice. He was focused, breathing steady and deep. From time to time, he'd glance down to check on Steve. "Doing good," Steve called up. "Got it," Pete replied. Then the route began to show its true nature. Stones under their hands started to shift, as if waiting for this moment. One hold broke loose and fell, crashing loudly into the canyon below. Pete froze, listening. The echo faded into the distance. Then he spoke quietly. "Careful. The rock's rotten. We'll have to find another line." He moves on, carefully, almost on tiptoe. Every step a test, every hold a question. 1 meter up takes a full minute. This isn't just a climb. It's a virgin route, untouched, unmarked. No old pitons, no traces of anyone before. Every piece of protection has to be placed by hand. Every crack cleaned out. Every bolt hammered in. Metal rings against stone. The hammer echoes through the canyon. Pete works calmly, like an engineer, precise, measured, without wasted motion. For him, this isn't an extreme sport. It's a craft, almost an art. Steve follows below. Every now and then, he looks up and sees Pete about 50 feet above, hanging against the wall, a small figure that looks like part of the rock itself, as if the mountain is holding him in place. "You good?" he shouts. "Yeah, it's solid. Come on up," Pete calls back. By midday, the sun turns brutal. The air shimmers with heat. Fingers stick to the granite. Sweat runs down Pete's face, but he doesn't stop. He knows this is the worst time to slow down. When the sun reaches its peak, the rocks start to loosen and fall. He has to clear the tough section before the rockfall hour begins. After 3 hours of steady climbing, they reach an almost vertical wall. Pete studies the line, hammers in a new piton, pulls himself up. For a moment, he's hanging on one arm, setting the next anchor. Even his breathing sounds loud now. Below, Steve watches like through glass, the silence so sharp it carries every metallic strike, every breath. Pete drives the last Peton in and shouts down, "All set, your turn." Steve starts climbing. His arms tremble with fatigue, but his eyes are bright. They're almost there. On a small grassy ledge, they finally stop, drop their packs, sit down. The sun hits them straight in the face. They drink from their flasks, split the last energy bars. "Well," Steve says, wiping the sweat from his forehead, "looks like everything's going perfectly." Pete nods but doesn't relax. He checks the carabiners on his harness again, tightens the rope. That movement is second nature to him, as if the act of checking itself keeps him calm. By now the sky is completely clear, not a single cloud. The slope above looks gentle, maybe another 150 feet to the end of the road. The hardest part is behind them. "One more hour," Pete says, "then coffee down below." They laugh. The joke sounds simple, almost casual. Pete climbs out first. The sunlight flashes off his helmet, blinding him for a moment. His body moves in perfect sync. Right foot, left hand, short breath. Step, hold, pull. Everything feels familiar. He's in the flow, that quiet state where rhythm, breath, and movement become one. Then, a sound, thin, sharp, like someone just loosed an arrow, a whistle, then another. Steve looks up, confused for a second, not understanding what's happening. Pete hears a dull thud, then another, and another. A rock is bouncing down the wall, getting closer with every hit. He has no time to react, no time even to look up. Impact. Direct hit to the top of his head. The force is brutal. The helmet splits in two like a cracked shell. Fragments scatter and tumble down the cliff. Steve freezes. A second ago, Pete was moving, alive, calling out commands. And now his body goes limp. His hands let go. He drops. But the rope catches. The fall stops. Pete hangs motionless in midair. "Pete!" Steve yells. "Pete, can you hear me?" No answer. He starts climbing up, frantic but careful. Every move heavy with fear. His throat is dry, his breath uneven. He reaches Pete, grabs his shoulder, turns him around. The helmet is shattered, the face calm, almost peaceful. The eyes open, but empty. Steve checks for a pulse. Neck, wrist, nothing. Just silence. He knows it's over. The world around him seems to stop making sound, only the wind, and the pounding of his own heartbeat in his ears. He clings to the rock, holding his friend's shoulder, whispering, "This can't be happening. Just a minute ago, everything was fine." For a while, seconds, maybe minutes, Steve just hangs there beside Pete's body, frozen, his mind blank, ringing like a stretched wire. Then slowly, breath returns, the heartbeat steadies, thoughts start to form. He understands there's nothing more he can do up here. Pete is gone, and if he leaves him hanging, the body will either fall or stay trapped on this wall forever. Pete wouldn't have wanted that. He has to bring him down, carefully, slowly. Steve ties an extra rope, checks every knot. His hands are shaking, fingers barely obey. He avoids looking at Pete's face, just focuses on the work, moving like a machine. "I'm sorry, Pete," he whispers. "I'm taking you down." He starts descending, 1 meter at a time, pull by pull. Lowers Pete's body first, then follows. Resecures the rope. Lowers again. Finally, both of them are on the ground. Thoughts drift back slowly, like echoes in the valley. Steve tells himself it was an accident. Nature. The mountain. A random fall. The rock came loose on its own. No one's fault. That's how it is up here. Anything can happen. He won't allow any other thought, not even for a second. He refuses to imagine that someone might have thrown that rock, out of carelessness, or worse, for fun. No. It was just nature. That's what he tells himself. It's the only way to keep breathing. And then he hears voices. At first, he thinks he's imagining it. Stress, exhaustion, shock. But no. The voices are real, getting closer. 2 men appear from around the bend, young, dressed for hiking, their faces tense, uneasy. One of them looks at Steve, then at the body beside him, and says quietly, "It was me. I threw the rock." Steve just stares. His mind can't process the words. Everything happened too fast. His friend's death, the descent, the panic. And now these two strangers stand in front of him, and one of them says, "I threw the rock." Luke Rodolph, 24 years old, just a regular guy from Casper, Wyoming. He came to the mountains for the weekend with his family. 8 adults, 4 kids, a picnic, fresh air, beautiful views. No one planned for tragedy. That morning, Luke and his brother Aaron decided to go for a short hike. The rest of the family stayed at camp, cooking breakfast, playing with the kids. The brothers wanted to explore, full of energy and curiosity. They had heard about the Chinese Wall. That's what locals call the nearby rock cirque. They hiked up the trail, reached the edge, and saw it. A massive stone bowl, sheer walls, loose scree, a silence so deep it rang in their ears. Aaron picked up a rock, small, the size of a fist. Looked down, threw it. The rock fell, 1 second, 2, 3, then hit the wall far below. The echo rolled through the valley, beautiful, mesmerizing. Luke stepped up, grabbed a bigger rock, maybe 5 pounds, swung his arm, threw it. Imagine that. They weren't thinking, just fooling around, the way countless people do in the mountains, throwing rocks, watching them fall, listening for the sound when they hit. Simple human curiosity. A child's game in grown men's bodies, but up here, there are no harmless games. The rock fell, Luke followed it with his eyes, and then he saw 2 tiny figures on the wall below. Helmets, ropes, climbers. He realized it too late. The rock was already in motion, already accelerating, already tracing a perfect arc through the air that couldn't be undone. He saw it hit one of the climbers, saw the body go limp, hanging still on the rope. His heart stopped, literally. For a second, he felt as if his own heart had frozen inside his chest. "Oh God," he whispered. "Oh my God, what have I done?" Aaron saw it too, grabbed his brother by the shoulder. "We have to go down, now." They start running, down the trail, through bushes, breaking branches as they go. Their breath shortens, their legs stumble, but they keep running. Because down there, someone might be hurt, might need help, might already be dead. It takes them nearly an hour to reach the base of the wall. They see a figure ahead, someone climbing down, dragging something behind him. As they get closer, they realize it's a body. Steve is sitting on a rock, his face gray from shock. Beside him lies Pete, still, lifeless. Luke takes a step forward, his throat tightens. Words won't come, but he forces them out. "It was me. I threw the rock." 4 words that will change his life forever. Steve looks at him, eyes hollow, expression empty. He tries to process what he's just heard. The rock didn't fall on its own. Someone threw it, not on purpose, not out of malice. But what difference does it make? Pete is dead, and the man standing in front of him is the reason why. Luke waits. What will Steve do? Yell? Hit him? Call the police? Steve stays silent for a long time. Then he slowly stands up, walks over, looks Luke in the eye, and says, "I forgive you." 3 words no one expected. Luke can't believe it. Forgive? Now? Here? But Steve nods. For him, forgiveness isn't a choice. It's a duty. It's how he was raised. It's how he's lived his whole life. It doesn't mean it doesn't hurt. It doesn't mean he accepts what happened. But holding on to anger, that's something he's never known how to do. Not even now. Not even here. Aaron stands off to the side, looking from his brother to the climber to the body on the ground. He takes out his phone and calls for rescue. The signal is weak, but it connects. The dispatcher on the other end asks, "What happened?" "An accident," Aaron says. "A man's dead. We need help." Rescuers set out, but the road to this place takes hours. A helicopter can't land. It's too narrow, too many cliffs. Steve, Luke, and Aaron stay together, sitting beside Pete's body, silent. Sometimes one of them speaks, short sentences, fragments of thought. Luke keeps repeating, "I didn't see them. I just threw a rock. I didn't know." Steve nods. He knows, he understands. But it doesn't change anything. Aaron stares up at the sky, trying to make sense of it all. A normal hike, a normal day. And now, death. They've become part of someone else's tragedy. Forever. The sun climbs higher. The heat builds. Steve takes off his jacket and lays it gently over Pete's face. He can't bear to see his friend's open eyes anymore. Luke sits with his head in his hands, one thought spinning in his mind. I'm guilty. I killed someone. I'm 24 years old. My whole life ahead of me. And now this death is part of me. Forever. After 4 hours, the rescuers arrive, 6 men carrying a stretcher. A medic kneels beside Pete, checks him, writes down the time and circumstances. They take Steve aside and start asking questions. He answers automatically. Yes, we were climbing the north wall. Yes, the rock came from above. No, I didn't see exactly where, just the impact. And then Pete fell. They question Luke too. He tells them everything, doesn't hide, doesn't try to make excuses. Yes, I threw the rock. I didn't see the climbers below. I realized what happened only when it was too late. One rescuer shakes his head. Another looks at him with quiet judgment. A third just writes it all down. They take Pete's body away. Steve too. He needs medical care. Shock, dehydration, emotional trauma. Luke and Aaron stay behind. One of the rescuers tells them, "You can go. The police will contact you later." They walk back to camp in silence, each lost in thought. What do you even say to your family? How do you explain this to the kids? How do you live with it? When they arrive, their parents know immediately. Something's wrong. Their faces are pale, eyes red. Luke's mother steps forward. What happened? Luke opens his mouth, then closes it. He can't get the words out. Aaron answers for him. There was an accident. Luke accidentally, and then it all spills out. The rock, the climbers, the death. Their mother hugs Luke. He breaks down crying for the first time that day. Deep, uncontrollable sobs. Their father stands apart. His face is stone, trying to process what comes next. Do they need a lawyer? Will there be charges? Their older sister quietly gathers the kids and leads them away. They don't need to see this. They don't need to know the details. Luke sits on the ground, knees pulled to his chest, whispering over and over, "I took a man's life. I took a man's life." Technically, yes, his rock caused a death. But legally, morally, those are questions with no simple answers. He didn't mean to. He didn't plan it. He didn't see the climbers. He just threw a rock, a stupid, thoughtless thing people do thousands of times in the mountains. But this time, someone died. And now, 2 families have to live with that. Pete Absolon's family, without a husband and father. The Rodolph family, with the knowledge that their son, their brother, their nephew, caused another man's death. The mountains don't forgive mistakes, even the innocent ones. Within hours, the news spreads across Lander, a small Wyoming town where everyone knows everyone. Pete Absolon wasn't just anyone. He was the director of the Rocky Mountain Institute, a teacher, a mentor, a man who had saved dozens of lives in the mountains. And now he was gone because of a rock. The climbing community reacts instantly. Forums, social media, local bars where climbers gather after training. Everywhere the same mix of outrage, disbelief, and grief. One NOLS instructor writes on his blog, "Pete taught safety for 17 years, checked every rope twice, avoided risky routes, did everything right, and he died because someone else was careless. This isn't fate, it's a crime." Another adds, "We all know the rule. You never throw rocks in the mountains, ever, under any circumstances. It's the first thing beginners learn. That guy killed someone and didn't even realize it." The comments pile up by the hundreds. People share similar stories, near misses, close calls. Someone almost died from a falling rock in Yosemite. Someone else saw tourists tossing boulders from an overlook. The local Lander newspaper runs the story on its front page. Headline, "Tragedy in the Mountains. Experienced climber killed by falling rock." Pete's photo, smiling, helmet on, rope slung over his shoulder. Everyone reads the article. In a town of 7,000 people, news like this is an event. People talk about it in grocery stores, at gas stations, in schools. Many knew Pete personally. He'd taught their kids how to climb, led weekend hikes, spoke at school assemblies about mountain safety. Now he's gone, and the one responsible isn't a climber, not even close, just a tourist who threw a rock for fun. The police open an investigation, standard procedure for any fatal accident. They interview witnesses, examine the site, take statements. Steve Hurley gives a detailed account. He describes the climb, the falling rock, Luke's confession. His voice is steady, but the strain is obvious. He's holding himself together by will alone. Luke Rodolph is summoned for questioning. He arrives with a lawyer, answers everything honestly. doesn't hide, doesn't twist the truth. Yes, he threw the rock. No, he didn't see the climbers. Yes, he knows his action caused someone's death. The investigator studies him for a long time. What he sees isn't a criminal. It's a young man crushed by guilt, not malicious, not violent, just a person who made a terrible mistake. But that mistake cost a life. Luke's lawyer lays it out plainly. My client had no intention to harm anyone. He was unaware of the climber's presence. It was an accident. Tragic, but an accident. The investigator nods, taking notes, but inside, he's unsure. Was it really an accident or criminal negligence? The case file is passed to the county prosecutor, a man with more than 10 years on the job, who's seen everything from petty theft to homicide. He spends several days on it, reads the statements, studies the photos from the scene, consults experts. And then comes the question, was this a crime? On one hand, a man is dead. The cause of death, the actions of Luke Rodolph. He threw the rock that became the weapon of an unintended killing. On the other, there was no intent. Luke didn't know climbers were below. He didn't mean to hurt anyone. He couldn't have foreseen the outcome. The prosecutor digs into the archives, looking for similar cases. And he finds one. 1994, Yosemite National Park. 3 young climbers summit El Capitan. They celebrate and decide to toss a few rocks off the top, just for fun. The rocks plunge downward. One hits a climber on the wall below. The man falls 30 meters. The rope catches him, but the injuries are fatal. He dies instantly. The 3 are arrested, charged with involuntary manslaughter. The trial lasts several months. The jury finds them guilty. The sentence? Real prison time, between 2 and 4 years each. The case makes national news. The climbing community supports the verdict. Throwing rocks isn't a joke. It's deadly to anyone below. The prosecutor reads through the old file, compares it to this one. The circumstances are similar, but not identical. In Yosemite, the climbers were on a popular route. They knew people were below. They threw the rocks knowingly, aware of the risk. Luke Rodolph was in a remote area, on a hiking trail where climbers were rare. He threw rocks without the faintest idea anyone was there. That changes everything. It turns reckless negligence into a tragic accident. The prosecutor consults with his colleagues, asking for their opinions. Most say the same thing. Proving guilt will be almost impossible. There's no intent, and whether he could have foreseen the consequences is doubtful. He makes his decision. No charges will be filed. The official ruling, a tragic accident. Luke Rodolph will not face criminal responsibility for the death of Pete Absolon. The announcement is made public, and the backlash begins. Lander's climbing community is furious. One of Pete's friends speaks to the local news. This isn't right. A man died because someone was careless, and the person responsible walks away. What does that mean? That you can throw rocks and say, I didn't know, and it's fine? Another adds, Pete dedicated his life to mountain safety. He taught people not to do things like that. And he died because someone didn't think. Pete's wife, Molly Absolon, issues a statement. Her words are broadcast on local TV and quoted in newspapers. My husband didn't die because of fate. He didn't die because of an accident. He died because of stupidity, because someone failed to think about what could happen. And the fact that this person won't be held accountable tells me my husband's life meant nothing. Her voice trembles, but her words are steady. She isn't calling for revenge. She isn't demanding punishment. She just wants recognition, that this wasn't fate. It was a mistake, someone's mistake. But the law doesn't always align with justice. The prosecutor explains his decision in an interview. I understand the family's pain. I understand the anger of the community. But my job is to apply the law. And the law requires proof of intent or gross negligence. In this case, there isn't enough. He adds, Mr. Rodolph didn't mean to kill anyone. He didn't know there were people below. His actions were careless, but not criminal. A tragedy? Yes. A crime? No. Legally, he's right, but emotionally, people can't accept it. The debate lasts for weeks. Newspaper columns, radio discussions, endless arguments. The town splits into 2 camps. Some say, Luke is guilty and should be held accountable. It doesn't matter whether he meant it or not. A man is dead because of what he did. Others argue, you can't send someone to prison for an accident. Luke isn't a criminal. He made a mistake, but not an evil one. The truth lies somewhere in between, and both sides are right, in their own way. But think about it. One rock, 2 seconds of flight, and the lives of several people change forever. Pete Absolon is dead. That's the one fact that will never change. He was 47 years old. Ahead of him were years, decades of plans, dreams, ordinary life, all of it gone in a single instant. His daughter, Avery, lost her father. She was almost 7. She won't remember his voice, won't remember how he taught her to tie knots, how he took her on easy hikes, showing her that the mountains weren't about danger, but about discipline and beauty. All she'll have are photos, stories told by her mother, fragments of memories shared by others who knew him. Molly Absolon lost her husband, her partner, her best friend, the man she built a life with, planned a future with. Now she's alone, with her daughter, and a grief that never really fades. But Molly isn't the kind of person who gives up. A few months after the tragedy, she makes a decision. Pete is gone, but his mission shouldn't die with him. His lessons, his approach to safety, his belief that mountains are beautiful but demand respect, that has to continue. She reaches out to the National Outdoor Leadership School, where Pete spent years and led the NOLS Rocky Mountain branch. Together with his colleagues and the family's friends, she works to create the Pete Absolon Memorial Endowment. The Pete Absolon Memorial Endowment. Its mission is simple: to support the training of instructors, develop safety programs, and preserve the knowledge Pete dedicated his life to sharing. The fund provides scholarships for future guides, finances instructor training, and supports new courses and projects focused on preventing mountain accidents. Pete's memory continues to live, not in words, but in action. At the fund's founding ceremony, Molly said, "Pete taught people not to fear the mountains, but to respect them, to understand that every step has consequences. Every decision can cost a life. I want his lessons to keep saving people, even now that he's gone." The fund still operates today. Dozens of instructors have been trained through its support. Hundreds of climbers have gained knowledge that may have already saved their lives. Pete is gone, but his legacy endures. August 19th, 2007. Lander, Wyoming. A public memorial ceremony. Dozens of people gather, friends, colleagues, students, climbers. Pete once led into the mountains, parents of the kids he taught to climb, and townspeople who simply knew him as a kind, generous man. The ceremony takes place outdoors, on the horizon, the mountains Pete loved all his life, the same mountains that took him. People take turns speaking, sharing memories. Some tell stories of how Pete saved them in dangerous moments. Others recall his jokes, his patience, his way of explaining difficult things in simple words. One instructor says, "Pete was a perfectionist. He checked every rope 3 times. It drove some of us crazy, but now I understand. He knew there are no small details in the mountains. One unchecked rope can mean a life. He taught us not to be heroes, but to be careful. And thanks to him, many of us are still here." Another adds, "Pete used to say, 'The mountains don't forgive mistakes, not yours, not anyone's.' And he was right. He did everything right that day, checked the gear, chose the route, climbed carefully. And he died because of someone else's mistake. It's unfair, but that's the reality of the mountains." Molly stands a little apart, listening, crying quietly. Her daughter beside her, holding her hand. At the end of the ceremony, everyone raises a glass, not of wine, but of clear water from a mountain stream. A toast to Pete, to his life, to his lessons, to the memory that will remain. Steve Hurley is there too, standing in the back row. He doesn't step forward, doesn't speak, just watches. For him, this isn't just a ceremony. It's an attempt to close a wound that still hasn't healed. He was there when Pete died, saw the impact, held his lifeless body, lowered him down, meter by meter. Those images never left. They visit him every night. After the tragedy, Steve tried to return to the mountains a few times, climbed easy routes, but every time he looked up, he didn't see rock. He saw that stone falling, heard that same sound of impact. He realized he couldn't do it anymore. Mountaineering ended for him that day, on the north face of the Wind River Range. Steve decided to change his life. He enrolled in law school at the University of Wyoming, studied for 3 years, earned his degree, and moved to Colorado. Now he works as an attorney, a quiet life. No mountains, no ropes, no risk. Just clients, cases, and paperwork. His colleagues don't know his past. To them, he's just another lawyer from Colorado. They have no idea that he once climbed walls where a single mistake could mean death, or that he lived through a tragedy that changed him forever. Sometimes, late at night, Steve sits by the window, looking out toward the distant mountains, thinking about Pete. About that day, about the rock. He forgave Luke Rudolph, truly forgave him. But forgiveness doesn't erase pain. Forgiveness isn't forgetting. It's learning to live without the weight of hate, but the memories remain. And they're heavier than any stone. Luke Rudolph never went to prison. On paper, he's free. Legally, he's innocent. But his life changed too. He lives with the knowledge that his action took a life, that somewhere, a girl is growing up without her father, a woman became a widow, and a friend can no longer look at the mountains the same way. Luke lives with that memory, quietly, without excuses, without trying to forget. But his story is now part of something larger. Because the tragedy of Pete Absolon isn't just about chance and personal grief. It's a reminder to everyone who has ever stood at the base of a cliff, climbed a wall, or looked down from above. The American Alpine Club regularly publishes accident reports, and one pattern repeats again and again. Rockfall is among the most common causes of death in the mountains. Sometimes it's a natural collapse. Sometimes it's simple human carelessness. Someone nudged a stone with a boot. Someone shifted a boulder, thinking it was stable. And down below, at that exact moment, there could be a person. In Yosemite, researchers calculated that a rock falling from the face of El Capitan, about 1,000 feet high, can reach speeds of over 170 miles per hour. Once it bounces, its path becomes completely unpredictable. It doesn't drop straight down. It ricochets off ledges, flying farther and farther like a ball skipping down a slope. Even the most experienced climber wouldn't have time to react. One of the most well-known recent cases happened on El Capitan in the fall of 2017. British climber Andrew Foster and his wife were at the base of the wall when a natural rockfall came down. No storm, no earthquake, just a section of granite breaking loose in warm weather, as it sometimes does. One instant, and he was gone. His wife survived by sheer luck. The incident became a warning for climbers around the world. Even when you think you're in a safe zone, nature plays by its own rules. That's why in U.S. national parks today, signs are posted at every viewpoint. Never throw or roll rocks. Or even more direct, never throw anything over the edge. Those words aren't just cautionary. They're written in memory of years of research, countless investigations, and far too many stories that all began the same way, with one small, thoughtless gesture. Sometimes it isn't a person who throws the stone. It's the mountain itself. No malice, no warning. Just the earth letting go of what it has held for centuries. And in those moments, even the most experienced become helpless. July 2025, the Karakoram. Here, the air is as fragile as glass, and the mountains follow their own laws, strict, indifferent to human plans. Near the summit of Layla Peak, a 6,000-meter giant, two climbers are moving upward. One of them is Laura Dahlmeier, two-time Olympic champion in biathlon, multiple World Cup winner, one of Germany's most beloved athletes. After retiring from professional sport, she didn't choose comfort. She chose mountains. "I need the kind of silence only altitude can give," she once said. Laura eased into mountaineering step by step. First the Alps, then the Caucasus, Patagonia, the Himalayas. Her climbs were marked not by ambition, but by respect. For the terrain, for the limits, for life itself. She wasn't chasing records. Her goal was to test the edge without crossing it. So, when she decided to climb Layla Peak, few worried. If anyone knew how to do things right, it was Laura. Beside her was her partner, Marina Kraus, an experienced alpinist. Their teamwork was flawless. Short calls, steady rhythm, constant checks. They were around 5,800 meters high. The sun hit the ice hard. The wind played with flakes of snow. Everything was going perfectly. And then, that sound. The one every climber dreads. A crack, sharp like a branch breaking. One stone falls, then another, then a third. Within seconds, chaos. A storm of flying rock. The mountain shakes itself like a living thing, shedding what it no longer wants to hold. Marina presses flat against the wall. Stones scream past her. But one, large, jagged, unpredictable, hits Laura. One impact. It happens too fast. A single moment, and silence. only the ringing in the ears and the hollow understanding that nothing can be undone. Rescuers are contacted right away, but no one can reach her. The rockfall keeps coming, small stones raining down non-stop. Then the wind arrives, then snow. The Karakoram reminds everyone who's in charge. By the next day, it's clear. The body can't be recovered. And then someone remembers Laura's own words, written before the expedition. Don't risk other people's lives for mine. It wasn't a disclaimer. It was her belief. In the mountains, no one owes anyone anything, except one thing: never put others in danger. So the decision is made. Laura will stay where she fell, on the slope that looks straight into the sky. In Germany, the news hits like a shockwave. Reports flood the media. Candles appear outside her home. National teams start their training with a minute of silence. But among climbers, there's no talk of tragedy as spectacle, only of fate. Because everyone knows there's no immunity in the mountains, not for beginners, not for Olympic champions. Strength, skill, perfect preparation, none of it guarantees survival. Sometimes it isn't people who throw stones. It's the mountain, not out of anger, not out of fault, just because. The mountain decides its time. 18 years have passed since Pete Absolon's death. Then it was a human hand, a careless act. Now it's nature. But the result is the same, a life cut short, and the world a little quieter. Two stories separated by almost 2 decades echo the same truth. In the mountains, there's no such thing as a harmless stone. And yet, it isn't the end. Because nature keeps reminding us, not always loudly, sometimes softly, almost in a whisper, even in places where danger seems far away, where snow lies smooth as silk, where the peaks shine under the sun, and the ground crunches softly beneath your boots. Even there, beneath the snow, a rock can wait. October 1992, the south face of Annapurna, 7,000 meters. 2 French climbers, Pierre Béguin and Jean-Christophe Lafaille, are climbing light, alpine style. No fixed camps, no stockpiles of food, no room for mistakes. At that altitude, even breathing feels like a test. The storm hits without warning. Lafaille loses his partner. Béguin falls into the abyss. And suddenly, he's alone. Then another blow. A rock, rare on these frozen walls, comes loose and slams into his arm. A crack, pain, fracture. At sea level, it's an injury. Up here, it's a death sentence. At 7,000 meters, with one arm, survival is nearly impossible. But Lafaille does the impossible. 5 days alone, no food, no sleep, a shattered arm. He descends the ice wall, meter by meter, where every move could be the last. And somehow, he makes it. He lives. His ordeal became one of the most astonishing stories of human endurance, proof that even where rocks shouldn't fall, they still do. Because the mountain will always remind you, safety up here is an illusion. Now, these 3 stories, Pete Absolon, Laura Dahlmeier, and Jean-Christophe Lafaille, merge into one. Different decades, different peaks, the same truth. In the mountains, there are no accidents. Every stone, every step, every breath, always on the edge. If stories like this speak to you, hit the like button and subscribe to the channel. Every like helps us create new investigations and keep the memory of true heroes alive.